If you feel like you're running in place, it's actually because you've reached 99 degrees, the point just before water finally boils. You might have stayed up late planning your perfect life, but by morning you find yourself on the couch mindlessly scrolling through your phone. You blame your personality, labeling yourself as weak-willed, but the truth is you aren't weak. You just didn't realize that willpower isn't an abstract concept. It's a physical muscle inside your head. Your brain isn't broken. It's performing a perfectly normal task of saving energy. Today, we're going to dissect the cold neurological blueprint of why your effort feels wasted and expose how to rewire your hardware to become someone who always finishes. By the end of this video, you will realize that your current boredom is actually proof that you are growing at your maximum potential. Whenever we start something new, our brain throws a massive dopamine party. Novelty is the most powerful stimulant for the brain, making you move without even trying. It's like a supercar with a full tank of high-grade fuel screaming across the track. But the problem is that this dopamine system is a temporary bonus. Dopamine is a short-term subsidy paid out only when you discover something new. The moment things become familiar, your brain cold-bloodedly cuts that subsidy. Like a car that suddenly runs out of gas, that feeling of "I don't want to do this" is just a biological signal of fuel depletion. It isn't a character flaw, it's a perfectly normal response from a brain that prioritizes efficiency. But the cruelest truth starts now. Your brain doesn't just cut the fuel. Inside your head lives a stingy, cold-blooded master accountant. This accountant calculates the ROI, the return on investment for everything you do in real time. In neuroscience, this is called a reward prediction error. Yesterday, you worked out and felt great, so the accountant issued a dopamine bonus. But a week later, when you spend the same energy and the scale hasn't moved, the accountant pulls out a red pen and stamps your paperwork. Terrible ROI. You're just wasting energy, so shut this project immediately. The reason you wake up and ask, "Is this even worth it?" is because your internal accountant just handed you a strike notice. Now look around you. There are monsters who meet that same drop in ROI, the boring plateau, and keep moving anyway. Are they special superhumans with more patience? No. Inside their heads, a very specific physical device is running that most people never activate. It's a region in the front of the brain called the aMCC, your internal willpower muscle. Just like building your biceps at the gym, this area can be physically thickened through training. If you scan the brains of masters who finish everything they start, the aMCC is significantly thicker and more developed. Conversely, in people who have a habit of quitting early, this muscle is shriveled and thin. Are you still blaming your spirit for failing to lift weights when you simply don't have the muscle? This willpower muscle has a very annoying characteristic. It sleeps through everything you enjoy. When you're lying in bed watching TikTok, this muscle doesn't move a millimeter. The aMCC only wakes up and begins to flex when you are doing something you really don't want to do. When you are so bored you feel like you're losing your mind. When you are so tired you want to throw everything away. That is the exact moment this muscle is lifting a heavy dumbbell. You haven't been finishing things not because you have a bad character, but because your aMCC was starving and couldn't handle the weight of even a tiny bit of boredom. So how do you turn this flabby brain muscle into steel? Starting a 4-hour study session or a 5 a.m. jog tomorrow is not the answer. That's like a person who hasn't exercised in years trying to bench press 200 pounds. When you hit a massive overload, your brain triggers an emergency shutdown. To rewire your hardware while keeping your brain on your side, remember the 15% rule. When you reach the point you truly want to stop, the moment your internal accountant hands you the strike notice, you do exactly 15% more. If you planned to read 10 pages but feel like dying of boredom at page 3, don't force yourself to hit 10. Just read one more page and then close the book with a smile.
That one page is your threshold. Just as the last rep at the gym grows the muscle, your brain muscle physically thickens when you push past that one extra page. We also need to correct a fatal misunderstanding about growth. Most people believe that effort will lead to skill in a straight diagonal line, but in the real world, growth is never linear. Real growth happens in a staircase pattern. This is called the mastery curve, and it features long, boring stretches where nothing seems to be happening, the plateaus. In fact, 90% of your growth actually occurs during these plateaus. On the surface, it looks like nothing is moving, but inside your head, your brain is consolidating information to leap to the next step. Water looks exactly the same at 1 degree and 99 degrees. It only boils when you add that final 1 degree. Most people quit right during this plateau near 99 degrees. How do you survive this hellish plateau? The solution is to completely change your dopamine supply chain. Stop begging for dopamine from results you can't control, and start getting it from the system you can control 100%. A farmer who stares at the branches waiting for apples every morning will live in misery. A wise farmer ignores the apples. Instead, he focuses on his own actions. Did I water the tree today? This is a guaranteed victory because he can achieve it today simply by deciding to do it. Redefine your goals. Not losing 5 kilograms this month, a result metric, but walking for 20 minutes every morning, an action metric. The moment you switch metrics, you start stacking daily wins and providing your brain with a steady supply of dopamine, even during the longest plateau. However, even with a perfect system, there are too many enemies trying to hijack your focus. Specifically, 15-second short-form videos have broken your brain's ability to tolerate boredom. Your brain has a dopamine baseline, and modern society has pushed this threshold unnaturally high. It's just like a person who only eats spicy food being unable to taste fresh vegetables. In one experiment, people were left alone in a room and told to do nothing. 60% of the participants chose to give themselves electric shocks rather than sit in silence for 15 minutes. Boredom became harder to bear than physical pain. The real culprit behind your lack of consistency is this elevated dopamine threshold. Therefore, you must perform a dopamine reset before engaging your system. First, control the stimulation. During the time you run your system, place your smartphone in another room. If it's out of sight, your brain won't waste energy on it. Second, change your definition of boredom. When you feel bored, instead of thinking, "I don't want to do this," accept it as the process of shifting gears. Just as a car jerks slightly when it shifts gears, boredom is the mandatory entrance your brain must pass through to enter production mode. Don't just tolerate boredom, welcome it as a sign that your brain is preparing for deep focus. Only in silence does deep encoding occur, where your skills are truly etched into your brain. You are no longer a quitter. You are a master in training, disciplining your brain muscle according to a blueprint. The only way to engrave this identity into your brain is to pick one thing and push it for 6 months. Our goal isn't improvement, it's the collection of the data itself, the experience of having successfully crossed a boring plateau. Once you cross that boring stretch and leap to the next step just once, your brain will physically restructure itself. The conviction that I'm not incapable, I was just on a plateau, will be carved into every cell. Once you have that data, you will never fear a new challenge again. Your life is the most complex software ever written, but it can only run as fast as your hardware allows. Strip off that old tag that says you have no willpower. Tomorrow morning, when your internal accountant whispers, "This is a losing deal," just smile. Think to yourself, "My brain muscle is tearing and growing right now," and do exactly 15% more. That 15% is the only boundary between you and the average person. The cycle of giving up ends here. You are now the owner of your brain, and you are ready to design and finish your own life. Subscribe and like. I'm the Wired Human.